But most of what I was doing during the day was I was writing. I was like writing for 12 hours a day.
Wow.
And then every other hour I was either, you know, in that catching up for coffee with people, or I was reading the Bible. And I did that. I've done it every year for the last 5 years straight. And every time I do it, I learn something new about myself. I learn something new about people. My faith increases. I become more emboldened to serve people rather than serve myself. And you know, there's obviously struggles with that. There's lessons through it. There's falterings. There's backslidings. I would be lying if I didn't say through those 5 years I didn't have a couple of benders. I absolutely did.
Yeah.
But I don't have the desire. I'm not imprisoned, and I don't drink anymore.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, so I felt like I was released from a prison, and then one of the other things I did during that time is I in my career I got the job pretty much 3 months after I arrived in the US to make In Like Flynn, and after going through the process, I was very generously hired by a producer, who gave me a shot, being a no-name filmmaker. But the circumstances amongst the production in Queensland when I got there was a little bit toxic, not that anyone was to blame per se, but it was a massive situation of communication errors and miscommunication between producers, and I decided, because I was quite deeply entrenched in this practice of just praying through everything in my life and praying through all the major decisions, I literally had to surrender that film. And I said in my prayer time, I said, God, if you want me to make this film, make it happen the way you want it to happen. Otherwise, open the door for me to leave. And the door opened for me to leave, and I left. I resigned, and that was probably one of the most difficult decisions I have had to make in my career, because that was a career killer. To walk away from a film like that. But in the wake of that, coming back to America, I just literally got on my knees and I said, well, if that wasn't the story you wanted me to tell, bring me the stories that you do want me to tell. And within a few months, I had two jobs. I had a job to write a film which was then called Saving King, now called Harlem 58, by a friend of mine named Elliot Yancey, an African American whose aunt was involved in this operation to save the life of Martin Luther King Jr. in 1958, following an assassination attempt on his life. And it was the story of the doctor that saved his life, an African American surgeon who never received credit for it, or never received recognition for it. Somebody else took the credit. And it was an important story because it was about realizing your potential and your purpose in life. And then the second story was about a young man named Andrew Chan, who was a Chinese Australian who'd been convicted for drug trafficking in Indonesia in 2005, sentenced to death, and was on death row for 10 years. During those 10 years, him and Mayu and Matt and some of the other Bali Niners that were, as they'd come to be known, reformed the entire prison system within Karabokan prison in Bali, and created these education opportunities and ministry opportunities and rehabilitation opportunities in particular to help prisoners reform, get off drugs and battle addiction. And they changed the world. They changed their world. And Andrew was a person of faith. Mayu ultimately did become a person of faith, but was a deeply introspective artist and very talented painter. And Matt was also a Christian. And their story inspired me. And I was, against all odds, given the opportunity to write that script. And since then, I've become a producer on both projects, and will direct Merciful, the story of Andrew Chan. So I realized that I had to surrender what I thought was the way to do this, what I thought was the best application for my abilities or my skills or whatever talent I may have. and put it toward telling stories that really meant something, not to me, but to the world and to God, you know, because I felt like, I feel like my revelation through reading the Bible is not that God is not political. He is not a God who's trying to legislate righteousness. He is a God who's trying to draw us closer to Him, and in every respect. And His best tool is storytelling. God's best tool has always been storytelling. You know, the Bible is one big epic piece of storytelling by multiple authors, and God respects the voice of the author. You know, and that's why, you know, a lot of criticism is thrown at Christianity, because Christians say the Word of God is authored by God. No, the Word of God is ordained by God, but it's authored by men. And the reason for that is because God values men. He values their ability, their voices. He values their voices. And that's why the Bible is full of so many different kinds of voices. You know, you've got Moses, who allegedly was the author of Genesis. We don't know 100%. But the creation story is from the perspective of a man who grew up in Egypt and who had a lack of identity and ultimately died in the desert. I mean, so we need to contextualize these stories, you know, and understand that God values the voice of the author. You know, back then He valued it, and today He values it. You know, so I realize the importance of storytelling, and I realize the importance of subjectivity, and how.
Do you find, Marc, that like when you share that with people, say you get a job offer to write, that you know, there might be content in the script or something that they ask you to direct, and it might have to do with violence, or, you know, like stuff like, you know, I was in Sons of Anarchy, and you know, all my buddies in Bikers for Christ, like they're you know, a bunch of different dudes, but they still have the same beliefs and faith. We're sort of in that world, but and everyone watches it. They like the show because that's their world of motorcycles. And like Pastor Z, his calling was he wanted to still be a rock singer. He owned his band, but his faith, and so he loved motorbikes. So he created Bikers for Christ. Yeah. And over, I don't know, 40 years or something, they're all over the world. Like they're in Asia, they're in pretty much every state in America, and so. How do you go, like, with certain sort of you know, content for films and that, you know, when you're asked maybe to direct or write something?
Well, I look at two things. I look at the story and whether it's adding value to our human experience, and I look at the people that are involved in it, you know. And there have been projects that have had a good message, but the people involved in it have not been great, you know, or vice versa, where the film's a horror film, but the people have been, you know, people that I feel like my collaboration with them could do something, you know. But at the same time, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of judgment in Christianity as a religion, even though the Bible commands us to not judge. Yeah. And I think that you know, Jesus liked to get down and dirty. You know, he was in the trenches with the sinners. So I'm not a fan of faith-based cinema in a sense that you're preaching to the choir. I mean, there have been some really beautiful films made that have
like The Prince of Egypt. That's really a good reach.
I love that. That's one of my favorite films, you know.
And I interviewed the producer of Prince of Egypt.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, and tell him about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, there's a lot of films about faith that I think reflect who God is much more than faith-based films, and I actually have a list of them on my Letterboxd account, but so I'll share. But like Man on Fire, for instance, Man on Fire is to me one of the most powerful films about faith ever made, and it's because it's about a man who learns to sacrifice his own self-hatred, his own self-condemnation, and actually through the Word of God learns the value of sacrifice. Because Denzel's reading his Bible throughout that whole film. And in fact, Tony Scott does this really powerful thing where he puts biblical text up on screen as supers in the middle of the movie. I mean, Hollywood would never allow that now.
Yeah.
But that is a powerful film about faith, because faith is about sacrifice, and ultimately he gives his life to save Dakota Fanning's life. I mean, The Thin Red Line is a beautiful film about faith. It is about all the facets of the cruelty of nature versus the selflessness of grace, and Jim Caviezel's soldier character in that is a person who comes full circle and realizes the value of sacrifice. Again, there's a running theme in these films. The Silence, Scorsese's movie, is a really powerful film about faith. Prince of Egypt, you mentioned.
And Joseph, King of Dreams. That's another good one.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, but I've played it for my daughters, and they loved it. And even Mary Magdalene, Garth Davies, who's a brilliant Australian director from Melbourne. That is probably one of the purest depictions of faith. Because it's, firstly, the Bible never says that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. That's just an assumption.
Yeah.
And she in that film, she's depicted as a friend of Jesus, and it's a pure friendship. It's really based on what male and female relationships should be. They should be encouraging. They should be equal. They should be, that's very much about Christ seeing Mary as an equal and encouraging her. But one of the most beautiful moments in that film is a moment where Judas comes to the foot of Christ and he says, I lost everything. The Romans took everything from me, right? And there have been two great depictions of Judas. One was Ian McShane in Jesus of Nazareth, and the other is in Mary Magdalene. And in both depictions, in Ian McShane's depiction, he's depicted as a revolutionary who really wants to put his heart and soul in this idea that Jesus has come to free the Jews from the oppression of the Romans. But Jesus actually came to forgive them. And that didn't line up with Judas's vision of the future. So the message in that was, and I believe that Jesus forgave Judas the moment that he betrayed him, and Judas was human. You and I, we're Judas every single day, all of us, And, so in Mary Magdalene, Garth Davies does this beautiful thing where Judas confesses that his family was slaughtered by the Romans, and how could he ever forgive? And if you can forgive that, if you can forgive your enemy in that, for the slaughter of your family, you are not bound by any particular act in life that can imprison you. You are not giving the power to anybody else in this life to control you.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, I was talking to an actor the other day I was coaching, and when we were talking, I realized there was something not quite working. He's living in another state in Australia working, and his partner's elsewhere. And we actually didn't end up coaching on, for the acting work. I said, something's bothering me. There's something not right with you. And what I said to him is, which may not make sense to people watching, but every time he didn't show up for an appointment online or Zoom and coaching, he'd always send one of those funny little, gifs, hey, little funny face or a little thing like that. And he kept doing it all the time. And then I said to him the other day, I said, don't send me any more of those things. He goes, what? I said, I don't want them. I said, because you're covering something up. I said, every time you're late for something, you don't just clean it up into, you always send me one of those things. I said, don't do it, because I want to know why you're doing it. He goes, no. Anyway, cut long story short, he's battling between his relationship with his partner, and he wants to act. And he said, it's a bit tough. She's in Melbourne and I'm here doing this. And I said to him, here's one question. I said, have you ever asked her? I said, I know you want to be an actor. I said, and you will be. You're intentional with everything you do. But have you asked her what she thinks about it? He goes, no. I said, maybe that's your problem, mate. I said, that's where you're being pulled both ways. And so I said, when we hang up, you need to call her and ask her, tell her you've never spoken to her about what she thinks about your acting career and how it's affecting them and how you can make both work. She wants to have a family and children and a house. Anyway, he did it, and he wrote back to me and he said, man, you were right. She said, yeah, it's always about you and your acting. And she said, it's always about me and the house and kids. There's no in between. And she was really grateful that he spoke about it. So now they can talk, and you can make both work, but you can't have it one way and not care about someone else's,
Yeah. And honestly, I think you've covered all of the questions on my list by now.
Yeah, pretty much. And look, just saying that, Doug, too, like we are out of time, but that was really great. And I think the message I got out of that, what you shared is, not everybody on here is, a believer or faith. Look, we've got people from all walks of life, but I think the power in what this whole series is about, you have to be empowered in yourself to never be ashamed of what you're doing, or what you believe in or what you want to do. And I'm talking moral, I'm not talking someone getting on going, I want to be a gangster. We'll support.
And it's tough because the faith seems to be inseparable from the politics, but I consider myself completely apolitical.
Yeah.
In some respects I'm extreme far left, and in some respects I probably am a little bit conservative, but but I just feel like Christians make the mistake of building a golden calf out of a government and believing that is the thing that's going to save Christianity or save the faith. I mean, render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar. That was what Jesus said. It's like, Christians should not get involved in politics. I just have to say that. and
I agree with you.
And every time they do, they destroy people's connection to God, which is
and the part of the plan is, like we just said, we're all here together. There's no escaping that. We're all here together, and as human beings go, we continually fight, we continually hurt each other and murder people, and all these things that you just think, wow, human beings are, they're cruel to each other. Where whatever you believe in life, like, we can all still get on. I mean, that's a massive statement, because will that ever happen? We don't know. I mean, the majority of people on the planet do get on. It's the small factions around, but they can cause massive stress and trauma to people wherever you live,
But the message we're trying to get across to people with this series is you can overcome your struggles and create a good future for yourself.
Absolutely.
And Marc is a perfect example, and I'm a perfect example. And I actually do have one last question, Marc.
Yeah.
What are the chances that you'd be willing to produce one of these scripts of mine?
If it's good, I'll produce it, Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Have to send you a copy. And would you be okay if I have your phone number so we can keep in touch?
Of course. Yeah.
Well, look, guys, that's pretty much it. Thanks, Marc. That was really great. Covered a whole area of life and what it takes to keep going with what you want to do in life. So that was great.
Yep, really, and it was the longest episode we've ever recorded.
Yeah, I reckon what you do, what we'll do is, for the viewers, you'll split it up into 2 episodes.
Yep, that's what I'll do.
Yeah, because it was great. It's well worth listening to. So that's part of this series, is you got to come on as who you are, and be bold and share who you are. Share what you've gone through and what you've done. That's the whole point of the series.
Yep.
To have people be authentic.
Yep. Yeah. So everybody, I want to thank both of my friends, Marc Furmie and Andy McPhee, for coming into this episode with me. And everybody, please check out on Amazon my latest book and my biggest success story, From Green Flags to Blue Flags 2, The Amazing Comeback of an Autistic Spokesperson.
Actually, just before you finish, I'll show you how powerful the program is. I had a guy call me the other day. Wants me to be in a film next year in Australia, right? So I'm in Los Angeles, obviously. He said, I'll pay for you to come out. Then he said, I'd also like to do a bit of mentoring with you for other things. I went, yeah. And then he said, I'm also watching your series. And he said, I've already started buying Doug's books. And I went, oh man, that is so cool. You know, he's reading his books and he's actually going to jump on and share his story. Like he gave me a glimpse of his life. And it's like, wow, you hear someone utter a few words and you go, well, I'm really lucky what I went through. You know, like some people have gone through hell. So what's amazing about this program, it's reaching out to people, and there's more people coming on and sharing their stories and being raw and, you know, just saying what's authentic to you and being, you know, transparent, vulnerable, all that stuff, you know.
Yeah,
for sure.
So thanks, Marc. I really appreciate it. And thanks again, Doug.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah, for sure, man.
For sure.
Definitely.
So everybody,
The next one will be when you just employed me as the lead actor, maybe the romantic lead. I have to get my teeth fixed because most of the roles I cover up the tattoos. So I can't wait for that role, mate.
It's coming, mate. It's coming.
awesome. All right.
90 years old. Hey, yeah, thanks, mate. I'll be down to the set tomorrow.
You're funny, Andy.
Oh, thanks, Doug. That's the kindest thing you've said to me in the last 2 days.
All righty. Everybody, please follow me on YouTube at Movie Maker Doug 55, and we'll see you next time on Being Relentless and Unstoppable.
See ya. Thanks, Marc.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Doug. Love you guys.
Thank you.